we have leadership. Now I'm going to continue putting this image up every class because I want you to remember who these people are, because you're going to meet a lot of great Hoffman people, but there's a lot of them. So you want to keep in mind who you're meeting with and who you need to run after when they say they only got 15 minutes, because some of these folks have to go to Oregon. And so this handsome devil who no longer has that hair in his face, Travis, he's going to be the one instructing us today, and I'm going to give him some opportunity as well as the rest of the class to talk about himself and what's most important when assembling your bid and what's related to infrastructure construction and Hoffman. And these are things that can mitigate risk as it relates to them considering your proposals. And so you want to make sure that you're giving them proposals in a format that they can understand, that's not going to take them a long time, and that they can trust. They can trust that they can trust your number, and if you say you're going to do it for X amount, you're going to do it for X amount. And you're going to be reading the contract, you're going to look at the schedule, and you're going to be examining those things that could impact your price, like the CWA. And so we want to make sure that you get the meat off the bone here. You all remember Brent from last week? Didn't he do a great job for us? Dave Johnson, who's really making it all possible, he's the one who I expressed the idea about a year and a half ago, and he said, go for it. Andrew Powell, his comrade, who handles a lot of, he's basically the project executive on the Port of Seattle projects. Mm-hmm. Brent is on the King County projects. And so if you kind of look at hierarchy and structure. And then Mel Jones, who's also in Oregon. And so remember that when you're talking with folks, keep in mind that they may have to go back. I'm buying him around after this because he did us a favor because he thought it was at headquarters. So he has a hotel at headquarters. So I guess I'm going to have to find a way to make it worth his while. So y'all make sure you make it worth his while. So with no further ado, here from Portland, Oregon, Hoffman Construction's man behind the numbers, Travis Matson.
Thank you. Thank you. So, appreciate all you guys taking your time out of your day to be here. It's important to you and it's important to me. I asked earlier before everyone got in the room, how long you've been in construction? We know that you're the old timer here, next to me. So real quick, quick show of hands. How many of you have been in construction 30 years? How many have been in less than 30? How many have you been in less than 5? All right, so somewhere between 5 and 30 years is a vast amount of experience. Thing that I learned about construction is there's a lot of money to be made in construction. There's also not a lot of smart people in construction sometimes.
I guess he looked at me when he said that. That's some.
I was just seeing if my face was up there
yeah,
still.
Okay, yeah. No, hang on. Let's turn the slide. Matter of fact. Oh, hey!
So, I asked earlier, how many of you went to school for this? How many of you went and got a degree in construction management, engineering, something like that? Very limited amount. One of you. So that's what I was asking. How have you laid in bed at night when you're a little kid, run around saying, hey, I want to play cost engineer, I want to be, the estimator, I want to be a project manager. I didn't. I originally went to school to be an attorney, but turns out I was too honest. So quick, brief history of me, why I'm here, why people listen to me is I started construction when I was 22, and I wasn't planning on being in construction. I was actually working for a law office as a paralegal. And my dad was in construction. And so he said, hey, drive my truck up for me. to this project up in Oregon, and then I'll fly you back home. I said, okay. He lied. He had me stay there for a week and then drove me back home. First thing I learned about construction. But so I got into construction because the company that was doing he was a telecom project manager, nationwide telecom project manager. And his boss was a young guy who I didn't know was his boss, like mid-30s, so that's a young guy for me, mid-30s. And he was talking to me, and I thought the boss was the copy machine salesman. And so he and I were talking, having a great conversation. He's like, oh, you should come work with me. And I said, I don't want to sell copy machines. He said, no, I'm your dad's boss. And I was like, why would I come work for you? I'm working for a law office. I'm a paralegal. I'm making good money. He's like, oh, we're going to pay you a lot more money. And I said, well, that's a great reason to go. And as I got older, it turned out I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by not having to worry about money. And then I try to explain to my daughter, money brings choices, education brings choices. In construction, a lot of education is based on experience of doing something wrong, learning from mistakes. I guarantee you'll remember the next time you do that. Don't hit your thumb with a hammer. You'll remember the next time. See, took you 30 years. But so when I started in telecom, I started in the office as a drafter, like doing red line drawings, doing as-builts. And these older guys were coming in and they were drinking coffee and having a great time and telling me about what they were doing, which they were designing and inspecting the telecom projects. And I said, I want to learn how to do that. I didn't have any experience doing it, but the manager said, hey, well, if you want to learn how to do that, come work for me for free and I'll teach you how to do it. So every day after work, every weekend, I went on the job with him and learned how to do the job for free. He didn't think I was going to do it, but I wanted to learn. So Tony Johnson for our company a lot of times says that opportunity looks like opportunity is hidden under overalls because it's hard work. So a lot of times the opportunities we're presented with were not, and the careers we choose are not what we went to school for. It's not what we went to. Originally, I wanted to be an animator and make cartoons, but my dad told me there's no money in that, so I started this. I put this up here. I'm going to go to back to the first slide because there was a note I had in here.
Is there a chance we could email?
When we talk about estimating, to me, estimating is combining art and math.
Yeah, because I don't want to get Keith in trouble.
You have to be good at math.
He's doing
know what stuff costs. You have to figure out areas, square footage. F of S is equal to 1/2 over multiplied by the end derivative. But it's also art because you have to imagine what you're building. You're taking a set of plans, if you're lucky, or a napkin sketch, and trying to figure out what it costs to build it.
Videotaping at the same time.
And so a lot of the work we do is imaginative. We're trying to figure out what someone looks for. So how do we share those ideas? How do we explain what it is that we're talking about?
Thank you so much.
And so in infrastructure, we start talking about budgets, and it's not just numbers on paper. It's taking your and delivering certainty through transparency and collaboration. So what we're doing is we're trying to explain to someone else what we think this job is going to cost, what are the cost drivers, what's the market conditions, what are the risk factors. So we start looking at all these parts and pieces and putting it together, and we have to communicate that. So the biggest part is communication, explaining, because if you think of something and I think of something, I may have an idea when I ask you, oh, do you have flagging in this? And you say, yes, I got flagging. And I say, good. And I think that your idea of flagging is stamped drawings, traffic control plans, cones, certified flaggers, different delineations based on all the work that's progressing. And your idea might be two guys and a stop sign. The big difference. I'll give you a prime example. I was telling Dan this. Tuesday was the first day of school for my daughter. I'm taking her to school. 8 in the morning, 4-way intersection. Construction company has one of the lanes closed. It just so happens to be the lane that's in front of the school. So you have 500 parents bringing their kids to school. And to leave the school, they now have to be rerouted through a residential neighborhood, which the construction company did not coordinate with the residential neighborhood. So all their cars are still parked on the streets. So now you have school buses trying to weave through the residential neighborhood. And so now you're getting head-on traffic problems, just complete chaos. So it took me 40 minutes to go a mile and a half to drop my daughter off at school. So almost half the kids at school are almost late because of the contractor there who had no signage, 2 cones, 1 flagger. So it was just utter chaos. Can't believe the city let it happen, but anyway. So when we talk about communication, making sure that we're talking about having the same ideas, what we're talking about. For subcontractors, the estimating process is an opportunity to share your expertise, to share your risk, what you see is wrong with a project. You guys are experts in your field. It is time to share that knowledge base. It is, from a Hoffman standpoint, I don't self-perform this scope of work. I'm expecting you to perform that work. So I'm expecting you to, when you're looking at the job, you're looking at the project, you're looking at, here's what I see as risk, here's what I see as opportunity. And so we talk about transparency. Every estimate that I turn in is open book estimate. Anybody in the city, the county, whoever we're doing work for can see where our numbers are. There's no hidden fees, there's no hidden agendas, because a lot of times we're doing projects that are public works jobs, or we're doing stuff for the state, or we're doing stuff for clients who want to, figure out why we're paying this guy this much and this guy this much, So that open transparency, it breaks down everything that we're doing. So kind of a brief agenda of what we want to talk about today. And Dan started us off with the important stuff, introductions, welcomes.
Well, before we get started, I want to have an opportunity for each one of them to introduce themselves to you. Let's start right over here. Pat.
I'm Pat Frombeck. I'm with Diverse Contractors and Associates, and we do Division 10s.
I'm Lynn from Lincoln Builders, a general contractor. We do commercial and residential projects, 44 years in business.
Ron West, RW West Consultants and Inspection Services. I've been providing inspection services for over 39 years. Also provide some AI estimating solutions and for construction to make life easier.
My name is Jimmy Mata, the owner of Oda Construction, and you've heard what Jimmy just said what we do, and he does everything else, estimating, making sure the operations are running well. I'm also the president of Northwest Minority Builders Alliance, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Kelly Jefferson with KCD Trucking. I do dump trucking, street sweeping, snow plowing, water truck, and also the vice president of the Washington's Truckers Consortium as well.
The facilities operation manager for Leisha Coppin.
Thank you.
For Hughes Group.
Good afternoon. I'm Marcus Cola. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Apex Electrical Group. We are an electrical and heavy civil contractor.
My name's Nikki Jajic, and I'm here with Marcus.
Hi, I'm Deja. I am the commercial sales rep for DTG Recycle. We do portable site services and recycling as well.
Hello, I'm Ezra Davis. I work with Dan with Platinum. I also own a company called Leggett, where we do business formations, LLCs, S-Corps, and corporations.
Hi, my name is Abel. I'm with Surety Security. We're a security guard services provider throughout Western Washington, armed and unarmed security.
Good afternoon. My name is Petros. I'm from ZAP Dump Trucking Services. We do hauling constructions, and we are certified DBE, MBE, and SCS.
I'm Luke Vandekamp. I'm with Hoffman Construction, here to support this seminar and then network with any of you who would like to be in touch.
My name is Daryl. I'm with DEP Mechanical Services. We do plumbing and mechanical work.
My name is Jasmine Campbell. I'm here with Top Choice Supplies and Hughes Group.
Christopher Hughes with Hughes Group. I'm the COO and the Director of Construction as well. We do traffic control, landscape construction, post-construction clean, asphalt, concrete, and there's something else I'm missing. I'm missing something.
You got so many representatives here. I'm sure they're going to figure it out.
I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out.
My name is David Vincent. I'm the owner of Vincent HVAC Company, and I'm a vendor as well, and DBE certified. I do maintenance and installation of HVAC systems like air handlers and furnace and heat pumps.
My name is Giovanni Azael. with Regio Construction. I'm the owner of Regio Construction. We do residential, commercial, with a background in wastewater engineering, roadway, mostly anything you can think of horizontal construction.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Jones Thomas. Everybody calls me JT. I am a wastewater treatment plant operations commission consultant.
Hey everyone, my name is Leo Novsky. I'm executive communication and leadership coach, and I work with Dan as in business development for EIW. I'm very honored to be here. 0 years in construction.
And your new role?
Oh, and I'm also a business development at City U. If you guys are familiar, it's an amazing working men's university, women's and men's university, and they do undergraduate, graduate, and doctoral work, which is pretty incredible. So check that out. And again, pleasure to be here. Thanks, Dan.
Sorry about that, everyone. I just wanted Travis to have an opportunity to get to introduce himself. And the two of you, can we have an opportunity? Can you give it to Keith real quick, and then we'll figure out how to do you. Hussein's Hotel, he got 3 cameras going. Keith.
I'm Keith Williams, owner of Fly Productions. I've been around this town about 40 years, doing photographs of just about every major event that's taking place in the central area of Seattle and downtown Seattle. So I've done work with Hoffman, Turner Construction, Midway, quite a few construction companies. So if you need any on-site construction photos for your website, call Flyrite. Call Flyrite.
You heard it. You're the lion. All right, Hussein.
Hey guys, my name's Hussein. I was at the last seminar. I'm a professional videographer. Believe it or not, I'm actually 23 years old. I have been a professional videographer for 4 years. I was a construction worker for 7 years doing home remodeling and everything under the sun. So I've been in you guys' shoes, just not super water. Not that. But yeah, if you guys have any questions about social media, if you're thinking of doing social media for your companies, which I highly recommend, come talk to me. I have a lot of information. I won't sell you guys on anything, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyway, moving on. All right. So what we're talking about is estimating guidance for subcontractors and infrastructure projects, wastewater, stormwater, sound transit, those types of projects. And this is, in theory, a comprehensive framework for developing accurate, competitive, and profitable estimates for complex infrastructure projects. This is our doctoral thesis, so when we get done with this, there's a quiz. So, in estimating, the biggest thing is having a realistic estimate. Anyone can go to budget together, but you want it to be based on reality. So, what I want to do is bring in some opportunities here. So, allocation increases profitability of program success. So when we start talking about a realistic cost estimate, we talk about what goes into that. We talk about stakeholder alignment. Who are the stakeholders in a project? So for example, I'm working on, we have a lot of estimates and a lot of the wastewater at King County, West Point. We have multiple projects on there. So I'm the lead estimator for all those projects. So we talk about who are the stakeholders. Well, there's the owners, there's the end users, there's Hoffman, there's all the subcontractors, all the trade partners, everyone that we're working with. They're all stakeholders in a project. So when we talk about, we have a shared expectations. You expect us to perform, we expect an estimate from you, we expect you guys to perform your work. There's an expectation you have of us to perform, to pay, to make sure you guys get paid, to make sure that safety's done right. And we have an expectation from the owners to make sure that we get paid, make sure that you get paid, to make sure that the project is designed correctly. So the designer, there's an expectation for that. So all these people who have a shared, we're all in the same boat, essentially. We're all rowing the same boat. Each person has a different oar, but essentially, when you look at a project, we're all rowing the same boat. Now, the other part of that is we're not talking about one project because we're talking about relationships. So as we move to the next project, what have we done on the last project? We've created relationships. So now we want to reinforce those relationships on the next project. So we had a great working relationship. Hey, here's something to wastewater treatment plant. I'm going to reach out to the guys that helped me on the job. I have some rough carpentry work going on. I'm going to reach out to the guys who are carpenters. So we talk about regular updating. So when you look at your past estimates that you've done for other projects, that's historical data, right? If I looked at your numbers from historical data and it said $14 a square foot for drywall, and I was like, oh, okay, well, let's just run drywall at $14 a square foot. That's not using historical data accurately because I don't know what you put into that number to make it data. So when people say, oh, it's historical data, you have to know what created that historical data to use that data. And so there's a really good program out right now that I like. I don't use it, but I like the program. It's called Edify. That's the company name. They're an estimating software company. But what they'll do is they can give you unit rates for your estimates. You give them your estimates. They can build out all your past historical data for you, so you have it as a record. And when you go to do another project, like, hey, this is a wastewater treatment project, I'm going to need where the last wastewater treatment projects I did. It has a record of those projects. Pull that information from all those past. This one has, say a wet well. This has a tank. This has aeration basin. This has UV. And you can go, okay, which projects have I done that had UV, had this, had that? And you can then see, okay, these last 3 projects had this. You can also adjust for a geographical area. So it's a good little program if you're looking for a out-of-the-box program to use. And for a big fee, you can give them all your past estimates, and they will build you a database with your numbers. So that was I thought it was an interesting program. So one of the things we're talking about is forecasting, historical data, current data. So risk and resource prioritization. So on a project, what is your high impact risks? Your long lead equipment, anything that has electrical, anything that's coming from a different country. What's the risk factor? You have tariffs you have to worry about. You're getting lumber. Where's the lumber coming from? You need to get rock. Is it coming from Canada? Is it coming from Mount Rainier? Where are those aggregates coming from? What's the trucking cost? So all that creates risk. What is the labor? Is the labor pool open? Are you getting Sabrina carpenters? So where is your risk factor? If you're buying the same product at the same price as he's buying the same product at the same price, so where's your risk? Your risk comes in labor. So now we want to talk about qualified labor, making sure that we have the appropriate people to do the job. And so whether you're pulling from the pool hall, whether you have people in your office saying, okay, who's the right person to run this project? Resource allocation, looking at all those things. So I kind of want to make this more interactive. So where do you see risk in your line of work? Anybody? Yes.
So pretty long lead items as a lot of company.
Yeah. And so if I said, hey, I need a generator on this job if I need I need to have these air handling units, what's the lead time on that? And so this is the biggest thing I get. Owners will have a time frame they want the project built in, but they don't know the lead time of projects. So early on, before we're even at 30% design, we're being asked at Hoffman, what is the lead time for transformers, switch gear, lead time? And so it's been 52 weeks for like 5 years now, and it's actually sometimes even longer. And so that's, when you talk about, so when you're thinking of, when I say stakeholders, who do you guys think of?
Ratepayers.
Yeah.
Those are the stakeholders of wastewater treatment plant, in my opinion.
Yeah, ratepayers, exactly. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is our families. Every project we work on affects our family. Whether it's listen to meetings in the morning when I'm trying to drive a kid to school, having to listen to our team having meetings, whether it's dad's working late, mom's working late, because they have to be on these projects. So what we do in our life affects our family too. So that's part of that balance, making sure we balance our family. What is the importance of cost estimating and in establishing a budget? Quick show of hands, how many of you put the estimates together for your company? All right. How many of you review an estimate someone else puts together? How many of you have to deal with the estimate that someone else put together? Try to build it for someone, a budget that you didn't build. You were just handed a project and said, go build this for this amount of money. That creates a problem. And again, I've been on both sides of the fence. I was a project manager for years and then I got into estimating. So when we start talking about the approved cost estimate is used to create the project budget. So when on a GCCM world, we're developing the budget for the owner client from early stages on. And at a certain point, we get to the MAC or the GMP, the maximum guaranteed cost. So that budget that we're giving them originally, like at 30%, they're taking that to a different power, whether it's to the state, to the feds, to make sure that project gets funded. And a lot of times, and I've seen it where you'll have a third-party estimator give you a budget, and I give them a budget, and they're way off. So the owner wants to know why was our third-party estimator at 100 million and you're at 350 million. And so I have to justify my estimate, which is why I say open book transparency, is everything in my estimate is, well, we reached out to the market, we got support from our trade partners, we got budgets from vendors, we put numbers together. So all of that comes in to create that cost estimate so we can justify why our budget is the way it is. It doesn't help us if we have an overblown budget, and it doesn't help us if we have a bad budget. So nothing will kill a project worse than not having enough money, because it's harder to go back and ask for more money than it is to be like, hey, we found a way to save some money on this job.
Trev,
Yes, sir.
when you asked the question, has anyone taken over a budget that they didn't prepare? I'm just curious, hey, Marcus, when you were dealing with a budget that you didn't prepare, and whether it's a contractor that failed and now you're jumping in to replace them, or it was someone on staff who, took a little vacation on a couple activities that had significant impact, how do you qualify their number? I'm going to ask that of a few more of you, but this was a great question. I want to make sure we don't let go by.
As far as the person that created the budget,
Yeah.
the estimate?
Yeah.
Well, typically who we have to estimate is not the one that manages the project. They actually have a budget given to them, and we have benchmarks of trying to meet that budget. Now, if they were to be gone, good thing we have two people that sit pretty much in the same location, and they typically talk about their projects. So, but you're right, we don't necessarily have any actual protocols put into place if that were to happen.
Ron, from your vantage point, as you've developed a lot of estimates over your lifetime, where are you qualifying their work? When you see something that's out of place, are you looking at a square footage kind of market, what your past experience have been, or what kind of qualifiers do you?
It's kind of a combination of square footage, but also too associating the number of man hours, with particular aspects of the project, because sometimes they don't, quite match up.
Mm-hmm.
But then also one of the other things is you have to look at the complexity of the project, right? It's like if you're coming in and you're just doing like TNA and all the walls, it's just a square, or if you're doing something where you have a lot of complex angles, that's going to change things significantly. And so it's hard to do that when you're just looking at an estimate someone else gave you unless you're taking a look at the plans yourself also.
Right. And you, Junior?
I think it's because obviously when we're putting the job together, it's I have field experience, so it's a lot like, hey, does that make sense, right? And kind of like what was said earlier, it's where have you got bit before, right? Mm-hmm. That's in, like Senior says, he goes, where does the devil live? Well, the devil lives in the details, and so it's just going in and just asking questions, right? And not only just asking questions of the estimator, but also ourselves of like, hey, did we pick this up, right? Because we're sitting down and we're asking, just as a group, are we capturing this, right? So,
right.
I want you to hold that one, please, because I have a whole slide dedicated to that comment. So, when we talk about, clarity, purpose, when we talk about, planning. So on a project, resources are finite, right? Money is finite. There's not a, golden goose out there. So, and we're talking about the, budgets. So a lot of times the entity, county, city, state, whomever it is, has a budget. This is what their working capital is. They hope that we can be within that range, and they have other soft costs that are not associated to the estimating construction side that they have to account for in that overall budget. So they say, hey, we have a $100 million budget. Well, maybe they only have 80 million because 20 million is already set aside for something else they're doing. And so, and when we're building our estimate, we're building it based off of a schedule of work, that we're making assumptions that this scope of work will take place at this opportune time. And in order for, electrical components to be there in 52 weeks, you need to be, ready for them. So that means other work has to be done in place for them to show up. And so as contractors, have you ever dealt with delays on jobs? So how many of you had a delay on a project that was not your fault? All right. And so what happens? Do you have people just standing by waiting? Be like, oh, this is a delay, don't worry about it. We got 3 other jobs that are not already scheduled. No. So now you have to somehow, because of, something that was not your fault, have to then reshuffle your teams, either to go put them on another job because this one's on hold, or when that work's ready to take place, try to scramble them back. So, and that affects people all down the line. Deliveries, functions. So it's imperative that, our funding be in place at the right time, our work be there. I'd like to look at it as the fire triangle. You have to have your labor, material, and equipment, all to make a project done. Well, if you don't have your materials there on time, project's not going to be built. If you don't have the labor resources, project's not going to be built. If you don't have the equipment to do the job, it's not going to be built. But the main one is the money. If you don't have the money to build the job, nothing's getting built. So this is what I refer to as the estimating process. Take a second, memorize it. There's a quiz later. So you were talking about questions. I'm not going to go through the entire each item on this. We're going to go through this as we go through these slides. But real quickly, you look at, the purpose of the project. Why are you building? Why are you here? What estimate needs to be done? What's our risk? What's our assumptions? What's, what data are we using? What's, our review process? What are these been updated drawings? Are these the right set? Are these a 6%? I've ran into project issues before where I've had someone not know that there was an updated 60% of the set of plans, and they're doing all their work off of 30%. And they show up on the job site with 30% plans and not the 100% drawings. I've seen that. So I was going to switch to the next slide. Does anybody else want to look at this before I click it? Okay.
They all have it.
All right. Why accurate estimating matters in infrastructure? Number one, we're protecting our profit margins. All right. We're protecting the profit margins for the projects. They have tight, we've already talked about tight funding. We want to avoid costly mistakes. Oh, second round.
And he can afford it, so y'all lock the door.
There was a rule: if your phone rings, you have to buy the round. And my alarm went off.
Yeah. Yeah, you better be diabetic. You better be taking some insulin. You got a question right here, front row, Lynn Simpson.
As you go through this process,
Yes, sir.
can you tell us what you do to avoid some of the hiccups that you've had, like you just said, 30% plans on the job, 70% plans on the job? Do you take all the plans from everybody and get rid of the 30%, 70%? I just was on a job the other day, and I looked, and we had the wrong plans on the board, and I snatched them out and put them in the trash. But who's doing that? And I think you should be trying to tell us how can we avoid.
In the field or in the estimating? In the field. So in the field, my experience is I would get rid of all the old sets of plans and just have my new sets. That's what I would do. I would archive the old sets of plans, and I communicate with every person on my job. There's an update, here's a new plan, there's an RFI. Even if the RFI isn't relevant to you, you're getting the RFI. All right, and what we do at Hoffman, we have like a program, usually like Procore, something like that, which sends out updates to everybody. Whether you want them or not, you're getting it. Please review this. It may or may not affect you. It may affect you down the line. It may affect you right now. You need to review this. And there's accountability and responsibility. You know, you're accountable for yourself to make sure that you have all the right information. We're accountable for making sure you have all the right information and access to that information. We're responsible for making sure all the information is updated. And we do a lot of projects. The projects I work on are usually bigger, larger industrial projects. And so we have modeling updates that happen every day. There's a model change, there's a note that went out, there's a new change in the model, they moved this pipeline over here, and that happens. And so a lot of other, I don't know what everyone else does in the jobs, but the jobs that I've been on in the field, the plans, there's one person who's the gatekeeper of making sure all the plans are updated, make sure everyone's updated, and that person, is sending out emails and notifications to everybody. Like, here's the new updated plans, here's the digital copy, here's the update. Yes, sir.
Is it specific to design build, or is it to all progressive design build?
Every project I've been on it's been for Hoffman has been when I'm out in the field versus in the office has been like an Intel project. So it's a design build project, and it's a massive project. You got 5,000 people on the job, so you have to make sure they're doing the right stuff. And so we have daily task force meetings, we have whiteboard meetings, we have this pre-task planning that takes place. So plan your work. What are you doing today? Hoffman has certain rules in the construction. There's nothing hits the floor. So there is no debris, tool, things you're tripping over, stepping over on your job. The job sites are very clean because it's part of safety, and Hoffman safety first. Yes, sir.
I'm confused a little bit on a couple questions. Are you asking what happens with our plan set?
No, I'm speaking towards him and what he's going over as far as the plan sets. This gentleman had said as far as 30%.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that this is a typical design build where you would be getting constant updated plans, and the CPM schedule would reflect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yes.
the original question was really tied to trying to avoid those types of risks with having updated documents. And so,
that's why I'm asking. Are you talking about updated documents to the job site, or are you talking about, because if you're showing up to the job site and you don't know if you got the accurate set of plans, there's bigger problems.
Right.
If you're helping estimate and buy out,
right,
and we're sending you a 30% set, and then we send you a 60% set, and then we got a 90 and you're confused in that, then that is more on your logistics and your own systems to make sure you got a process to void and get rid of the old ones when you see that email.
That's what I'm talking about, Mel. I'm trying to explain that, how you guys avoid that, because I just went on the job with the wrong plans there. But just like he said, he archives them. And the question is, if somebody calls your office out with a set of plans, who can give them that set of plans? Do you know if they've been changed or not? Or when they archive them, they're not available to send out anymore. That's what I'm trying to do.
Real quick, and I'll go to you, is before you come to the job to start doing any work, there's a meeting. You're coming out, you're coming to the job site before your work takes place, and we're making sure you have the right documents to do the work. And as the project has been progressing, you should be coming to or attending or be in meetings, because we love meetings apparently. Weekly, monthly meetings. And so you're engaged in those meetings from this time you might be on a weekly PM meeting, and and from the estimating standpoint, I set up meetings myself for everyone who's doing an estimate for me, and I do a weekly or monthly meeting depending upon the time frame of the project. It's like, hey, so we all know that, hey, we went from 30%, 60%, we have meetings. And once you sign up, also you're involved with the project management team, which is, kind of a cohesive environment, and you have meetings with them to make sure that you know what's going on the job. So that's kind of how we try to avoid it, is extra meetings.
Well, you had a question up there,
Yes.
and I just wanted to make reference, and Lynn's question was a general question. I don't think he was necessarily being specific to a certain project, but in the public sphere, you have sheet dates and titles, and so you can kind of track it, whether you're in a design bid build environment or you design build or GCCM. But if you're in the residential environment or multifamily or private environment, sometimes the architects aren't necessarily always updating their drawings, and so there's that receive stamp, old school. There's certain ways that you want to confirm that, and then there's addendums. In our sphere, we have addendums, so we know, hey, these plans are changing. But in the private sector, there's a lot more reconciliation, and that may be why we want to also talk about what Ron has become, more familiar with, using AI to help reduce some of those pitfalls. But Jimmy, you had something to add, and then we want to get back.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that what we end up doing, we have our pre-job. Hey, your form. What happens sometimes you can't get your foreman to go out there and sit in a meeting because they're costing you $95 an hour. So either Jimmy or myself, we're there. Okay, what's going on? What's going on? Then we have the pre-job with our foreman. Okay, now we're gonna get ready to start the job. So your job is the number one thing. We're talking about the plans here. Here's all the addendums. Here's all the changes. And then but we tell the foreman, when you get on the job, your number one thing to do right off when you get your first question is, what plan are you working off of? Period. That's what we ask the superintendent. That's what we ask the project manager if he's out on the job. What plans are you working on? Okay, well, then we look at the date. We look at what plans we have, and then we start working.
So I'm going to address this a little bit later, but I'm going to bring it up now since you brought that up. When you're doing an estimate for us, you are expected in your estimate to have someone who is available to be in those meetings. And so you need to put that budget in your estimate. So this is all part of the communication process of making sure that you know what costs you have to have in your estimate. Because if you're like, you come to the job site and we could write you a contract, and you say, oh, well, I don't have that in my budget, and I say, it's in your written contract, that all of a sudden you're gonna have a sour taste in your mouth towards us, because you're like, well, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And that's all part of that communication of what questions you should ask and what things we should tell you. Does that make sense? Because one thing I want to say though is like the last thing here, subcontractors detailed estimates form the backbone of our estimate. So which again affects the overall project. So if there's something that you're assuming and there's something I'm assuming, we need to make sure that we're talking, so we don't end up with Sabrina Carpenter. All right.
Y'all don't know who Sabrina Carpenter is?
Do you guys know? How many raise your hand know who Sabrina Carpenter is? How many of you know who the Carpenters are? Okay, so we had this conversation.
The music group, man, the music group. Come on. All right. Jimmy said we weren't listening to that shit.
So, how many of you know who Taylor Swift
Wrong
is?
demographic.
How many know who Taylor Swift is? All right. How many know Travis Kelce? Yeah, Mr. Swift.
Yes.
Exactly. So, when we talk about
question before you move on. Okay, so when you were talking about somebody using 30% of the drawings versus somebody who has 60% of the drawings, so if that incident happens, it's more so a miscommunication within their team and not the Hoffman team because they're sending out these updates.
I'm not pointing fingers, but I've seen it in my internal office in estimating where someone didn't read their email to know that there was an updated drawing, and had the 30% drawings and started calling the architect to ask questions, and I get a call from someone else saying, why is this guy calling this guy to ask these questions that was already clarified in the 60% documents? So I'm like, why is he looking at the 30% documents? So I've seen it happen before. It was Jerry.
I ain't saying no one.
Well, I think, go ahead. And I think for me, it's also, when you're signing the contract, a lot of times, I know, not everybody, but a lot of times those will be, spec'd out. They'll say revision 1, revision, the date that they were released and everything. And so, like, when we're talking about, updated drawings, if I bid my set off of 30% set and I'm going through my contract and it's the 60% set, I'm saying, hey, man, I didn't bid it off of this, right? And so, it's like right at the contract, from where you bid it to where you're signing the contract, that for me is like, it's a whole different ball game after you sign the contract.
Right. Remember in contracts, the bold print giveth and the small print taketh away.
Yeah.
All right.
For real.
Yes, sir.
So like on a GCCM project where you have, and in our cases, you have WIMBE participation, you have a hypothetical and a prime electrical contractor that is being tasked with fulfilling a goal on the project, and they reach out to a WIMBE firm that also does electrical but supply a specific scope within the electrical scope.
Yes.
When you as the GC are looking at quantifying what the electrical package is, you typically push that on to the electrical subcontractor, and they in turn push the expectations of giving a good estimate on the scope of work that's at hand. When that scope of work and due to the complexity of the project, also taking in fringe and burden benefits of union employees and things like that, when that number comes back and it's slightly higher and there's pushback on the price,
there always will be.
There's typically pushback. However, how does Hoffman see the quantification of that price when the expertise of utilizing a certified but experienced DBE firm or MBE firm, the price, at what point does that price, is that more important than the expertise?
So you're trying to, the question is qualifying the value of having participation on a project if in fact it's more than what the budget is?
Right.
So on a GCCM project, when I'm putting that work out to, let's say in this case we have an ECCM. So they're assisting in the design phase. So they're there early on, almost the same duration as I am, a little bit later, but maybe they come on board on 60%. And they know that they're going to have some sort of outreach that they're doing or some sort of other, resource that they're getting from. All that's going to be built into that number, okay? So they're going to give us our number, and we're going to talk about it. Okay, well, why is this X, Y, and Z value? And they're going to say, well, we had to go to this source. And myself, personally, I don't care what the price is because I don't let the client dictate the price. I care that it's the right price. Whether I have to pay this guy $400 an hour because he's the expert in what he does versus I'm paying this guy $150 an hour and he doesn't know what he's doing. So I'm going to pay the $400 guy because I want it to be done right the first time. So let me finish here. So I from a Hoffman standpoint, we're going to have these communications with the ECCM, and we're going to have the communications with you of, first of all, the owner's going to push back. So we're going to say, hey, where's the fat? Where do we trim the fat? Is there any fat to trim, right? And then we're going to go to bat with our ECCM client and say, this is what it is. We've already vetted this out. This is what the cost is. And so when I'm delivering that cost to the owner, so before there's an owner pushback, I've already had this conversation with you. I've already had this conversation with the ECCM of, okay, you give me your budget. What is in this number? Where's the, and if they can't answer the questions, because they should have already been having the conversations with you. And if they haven't had an agreed upon communication with you, and you're just saying, hey, this is what it is, and they're like, oh, well, Hoffman's not going to like that, they should be already having that conversation with you before it gets to me.
What happens if the ECCM or the Prime, their budget differs from Apex's number? And so now it's a opinion on production rates or...
Well, that could be between the ECCM and Apex to argue that case out amongst themselves.
Can't we just say 2 electrical contractors?
Yeah.
Can I give you what really happens on the other side of the fence?
Sure.
Is we have these conversations with them ahead of time. We walk in there and go, you're going to give them a number, right? Your number's going to come in high. You know why the number's going to come in high? Is because you got additional, you don't get the same breaks on materials. You're probably going to have to pay for an apprentice at a different rate than most other people are going to have to pay for. You're going to have to do some additional paperwork that you're not used to. So my cost is higher. If I'm not doing my job and letting the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and the other trade partners that we're asking to bring in that percentage, if I'm not communicating that to them, letting them know, we know that, and here is why. So have that conversation, figure that number out, roll that crap up and give it to us, then I'm not doing my job. So it's very important that we understand why your number is high, right? There's a perfectly good reason for it. And so explain that, and then we can also have that conversation with our customers. And that's the side we do. I want the best value. So if you want the best value, this is a team that we recommend because of these reasons. And then we can get past those. We do get pushback. It does happen, right? Everybody's not into it, and then sometimes you got to take a look. But that's how we try to push and get that understanding long before you're having to have an argument.
That's awesome. Just one more follow-up question. How committed is Hoffman to it? And I'm not sure if there's even a possibility as far as meeting with those diversified contractors prior to the ECCM, finding out what they're capable of doing, delineating a specific scope within that, and then giving the rest of it to the prime electrical contractor who may have a partnership or a strategic relationship in some form, whether past performance or in the future, to be able to carve that out exclusively for that diversified firm, knowing that they can do that, and there wouldn't be pushback because then we would technically be possibly a subcontractor directly underneath as a set aside ECCM.
I'm going to chime in on that. 100% that's why we do this. This is why we do outreach and do other things, is because we do that. We will set aside, carve out work and a lot of times we'll write it into the ECCM contract. The reason for that, instead of going direct to a smaller contractor, is because of the insurance requirements. The insurance requirements is usually too big for a smaller company to carry when you're looking at the scale of the project. I'm in the project, and this is my projects, the ones I deal with, because the projects I deal with are generally, 100, 500, billion, they're in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and so the insurance requirements are massive.
Absolutely.
And so that's why we will work with the different, ECCMs, MCCM, whatever, to carve out a portion. So if I said, hey, here's a $100,000 contract for you, and you need to carry, the insurance on that, and you start looking at our insurance policy that you have to carry, is more than your entire scope of work is. You're like, well, why am I going to...
For taking on 2 electricals versus 1 electrical?
Yes.
Okay, I see that. Okay.
So the insurance policy that you would have to carry as the contractor to do work on our project is so big comparison to what you would have to carry as a sub-tier. Does that make sense?
That's tricky. Yeah, I can follow up later, but thank you for answering my question. That's good.
Because and it's usually because the requirements for the insurance requirements are dictated by the client. And so,
great question, Mark.
It is a great question because it leads right into the confirm inclusions. All right. So when you're trying to clarify why your price is so high comparative to someone else, what's included in that? Goes back to what Mill's saying. We have this is the reason why. Specify the details. The devil hides there. So understand, so we talked about historical data, use unit pricing, market research. if you said, hey, here's a pipeline cost, it's $250 a foot for this pipeline, 36-inch pipe, and a wastewater system. It just so happens that was a greenfield project. There was no other buildings around. I wasn't doing work in Seattle. I was in Arizona. I can't use that same price for doing work at King County wastewater treatment plant that's an active sewage plant. So you have to know what's in that unit price.
And to that, when we talk about direct and indirect, obviously if you work for the port, I got a call from a real talented contractor about the process and requirements at the port. Well, that's different than the processes at the city. And so you have to embed that into your cost to make sure, that if you got to get badged, you've got to get drug tests, you've got to go background checked, all that crap, you want to make sure you embed that in there. Sorry.
Yes. Which is going back to what I was saying, is adjust for current conditions. Account for inflation, account for supply changes, account for regional variations, which includes current industry, labor, material prices, keeping pricing consistent with benchmarks, right? So maintaining a good working historic database is nice to have as a benchmark. A lot of times I'll get this question from newer estimators. They say, well, how do you know that costs $15 a square foot? I go, because I've done this long enough. But in my head, I'm thinking of the last 50 projects I did, and I'm adjusting it based on where I'm working. I'll give you a prime example. How many of you ever took any kind of, played a sport? Baseball? How many of you ever, football, did wrestling, did martial arts, anything like that? Well, I taught martial arts for over 20 years. And the thing about that is you're teaching people, how to stand, all right? Everything you ever learned in karate can be broken down to 4 things, the basics: standing, punching, kicking, blocking. And the only important thing on that is standing, how to stand. Because if you're standing wrong, all your punches are going to be weak. All your kicks are going to be weak. Your balance is going to be bad, all right? So you break it down to the most basic basics. But you do it so much it becomes instinctive. It's the same thing. You don't think. You don't blink. You just move. It's the same thing with when you do your job day in and day out all the time. The little things you've learned over the years become instinctive to you and common sense. The problem with common sense is it's not that common. It's a superpower. Most people think common sense is that little change dish at 7-Eleven where you change a penny, take a penny. All right, that's common sense. The thing is that think about all the little things that you do in your job that you've learned over the years. If I said, okay, why do we have 2 electrical plate covers there with nothing on them? They're just, what is the beneficial use of that? And you're gonna know that, oh, that's where they did something, because you've done it a million times. Me, I'm like, why'd they put those there?
You just gonna brush over the fact that he said he taught martial arts for 20 years, so should we be concerned if we give you a high number?
Yeah.
Hey Travis, should we be concerned if we give you a high number, your 20 years of martial arts training?
I didn't say how long I trained, I said that's how long I taught it.
Okay.
It's more like 50 years of training. So then we do talk about plans. Let's see, everything's covered here. We perform a thorough plan-based review. What do? We do a team review. We take our estimating field, we take estimating, our field, engineering, and we review the project drawings and specifications, identify and challenges, soil conditions, confined spaces, special equipment needs. Think about all the little things that you're going to need for this job. And that's when we start putting together your questions. What's the access to this site like? Do I have to have a standby person for every day I'm working there? Am I in confined space? Do I have to have HAZWOPER 30 training? Do I have to do this? All right?
What do you mean by standby person?
So when you're working in a confined space, like in a wastewater treatment plant, say like in a manhole or in a tunnel where breathing could be questionable because of either fumes or there's limited access, that's confined space. If you're in a trench and you have to have ladders for egress to get in and out of the trench, that's trench safety. But if you're confined space, you may have to have a person doing work, may have to have a harness on them attached to a tripod, a rescue system is what it is, in case they pass out and you have to pull them out. So you have someone who is a watch person that has to sit there and watch and make sure that someone doesn't pass out because they're working in a confined space. But, well, not just Firewatch. This is kind of like a Firewatch. Yeah.
So, is there such thing as over detailing an estimate?
For us, but not for you.
So that's why I was wondering, is there a thing, do you run into that as far as like people over detailing, like, well, I'm gonna be using 8,000 16 penny nails and they need to be hot dipped from this specific supplier. Does my question make sense?
Your question makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But to answer that real quick, like, is,
or do you prefer that?
well, yes, I prefer to know what's in your number, but I don't need to know how many snap ties you're using on a concrete pour. You know what I'm saying? I just need to know that you have, all labor, material, and equipment in this scope of work. If you're doing forming a concrete wall, I want to know that, yes, you have accounted yourself for forming materials, the concrete, the pump, you have all the parts and pieces, you got finishers in there, I want to know that you read the spec and you saw what the PSI of the concrete is, and you know what that is, and you know what kind of finish is on the concrete, and does it have a sealer, or does it have, is there a vapor barrier going in? I want to know that you know all those parts and pieces. What I don't need to know is that you have a box of 16 penny nails. Yeah. I want to know that,
but
forming materials.
When you submit a bunch of stuff, trust me, there's somebody that's sitting back there, and when they see a number come in from somebody else, they're going to remember that it's like, whoa, this guy had 16 boxes of this, and this guy,
exactly.
Hey, curious, how many boxes you got? And they're like, they won't know, or they'll be like 5. And then, so we'll use some of that detail to weed out and give us a better understanding. So yes, there's sometimes too much, but we'll find a way to use it, right? Okay. So,
well, the Made in America clause too is something that ends up
by American.
And now you're looking at some of the details of your fasteners and other things that typically weren't necessarily important, but it really is owner dependent.
So going back to like Buy America, Buy American, and a lot of specs will say that certain materials have to be American made and American produced and or assembled in America. So like prime example, VA project, Bay Area, everything had to be American steel. Vent piping, contractor put non-American steel on a building. And so the options were A, go in and tear everything out and put in the right stuff on his dime, which would have been more than his entire contract. Option B was pay a fine to the VA for that. The fine was still more than his contract. So he did all that work for free, essentially. But yeah, there were some aggressive negotiations on that. But who's at fault? The general contractor. The general contractor is at fault. It wasn't Hoffman. It was a different company, but the general contractor who didn't review. So if he submitted, this is the pipe we submitted on, and your PE didn't read that submittal and said, hey, oh yeah, it's approved, but he submitted it to the owner, and the owner approved the submittal. So it's like, wait a minute. So now you got an owner stamped approved submittal, and that's what the contractor went back on and says, hey, we submitted on this, you approved it. And they said, well, that's a change of conditions, you didn't file for that. It was like, so that's part of our team review. Cross-trade coordination. So this is one thing I want to talk about. We talk about you got an electrical contractor, mechanical contractor, right? Who's installing the instrumentation? Who's wiring it up? Who's doing the testing? Who's, carpenters. Exactly. So and so it's like you want to make sure that, okay, well, do you have heat trace on this? You know, who's carrying the heat? You know, who's carrying the control number? Who's, you know, so making sure that we're having that communication back and forth. You know, make sure that the drywaller is, you know, talking to the concrete guy so he knows when the concrete is being poured and he's not showing up 2 months early, you know, to put in the, they're like, well, where's the floor, man? You know, we don't have any walls to hang, you know. Make sure that the structural steel guy's there, you know, and communicating with the drywall, because a lot of times you'll have like ancillary steel that need to be installed that you're expecting it to be installed, but the structural steel guy's like, I don't do that. So that cross-trade communication, make sure, yes, sir.
So getting back to that situation of someone doing the submittal,
let's put the charger,
and they do a submittal, and Hoffman approves the submittal, and then finds out that they put the wrong material out of the job. If Hoffman gonna stand up and say, we approved it and we're gonna remedy that, or
Their lawyer will find that out, right? Because it'll probably, hopefully it wouldn't have to go to the attorney side, but at some point we're gonna look and be like, why do we have the wrong thing out there? And we're gonna go back and look through those submittals, and we're gonna find out that we approved their submittal, then that's another whole conversation, right? So
typically if you guys approve something, you gotta stand by it, typically.
Yeah, you'd love for that to happen.
Mel been in the industry a little while.
So to answer your question, that's what is referred to as a donkey meeting. Someone's getting their ass.
Question in the back.
It seems like that problem with the material should have been caught, because just like if you go to a restaurant, you order your food, the chef gets it and they bring it back to you. If you say, I want a steak well done, and it comes in rare, you're gonna send it back. So there should be a check at every level of procurement, receipt, and installation. Do we have the right product? We have the right product. So it failed at different levels. So I don't think if that was the case that the subcontractor should have ate that by himself.
They didn't. In that case, they didn't. The company had to eat a lot of that. But it was,
Quality person.
yeah. And then the second part of that is if you bring me a steak well done, I'm sending it back.
So I have a question.
I think I'm sorry, when
No, go ahead.
it comes to like, so it depends on the scenario, right? Like for us, that's why when we ask the foreman, hey, I know I need this material, and it's not just, okay, go pick it up, because you have different kind of material. So, and I think that's what ends up happening, because if you sent submittal, that's what you said you're gonna put in that bill, and if you don't put it, you're gonna take it all out and put it back in. And so some of it could be the sub's fault, you know, because what happens is I submit on Simcoe, but yet I'm putting, you know, Steeler, you know, stuff in. And so on that one I could see it, because, you know, the submittal was in, they proved that it's stamped.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm using. And, you know, we've been on both sides of that situation.
So now, if there's a situation, if you submitted, you know, let's just say the drawings called for FRP grading on a job, and you put in galvanized grading. And we're like, well, you submitted on FRP grading, that was what approved. I see galvanized, that's on you, you know.
Or sometimes you just can't get the material because it's not there. I mean, you ordered it, they said, well, we'll push that another week. Then you can do a condition of using some other kind of material. It's going to be acceptable.
No, I'll give you another prime example story happened to me in the past. Did a contract for minority contractor down in Salinas on the jail. It's the roofing contractor. They didn't order their materials in time. So their price of the materials went up more than their contract value with us. And they walked off the job. So I had to hire another contractor to do the job, which again was, and at the time, because, and this is where it bit us, is like we had a smaller contractor. It was federal money you had to have. And so they couldn't meet our bonding requirements and our insurance requirements. So all we did to help them out is we bonded their labor, not the materials. So we had to eat that. Yeah. So that was, yeah. Yeah. As I told you, wisdom comes from mistakes. All right. Yes.
So I was going to ask,
how many different variations of estimates do you see from different companies? Is it
There, can you be more specific?
does it list every single, like he was asking?
Oh yeah, I've seen estimates where it is literally like one lump sum, $20 million electrical,
If they low.
I've seen it also detailed out where every single thing is detailed out, all the labor, everything. So it just, the one lump sum, I sent it back and told him to redo his homework, but I've seen it come across that way. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I can't quantify it. And I've gotten this actually on the other side. Recently, I've gotten this from the county estimate. They want me to review this estimate and tell me how I think their third-party estimate looks. And I look at it, and everything is one lump sum. Then I said, well, given the amount of information I have on it, looks good. I have no idea how to quantify it because it's just a one lump sum number. So I don't know how much pipe they have. I don't know how many tanks they have. Just everything is one lump sum all the way down. So the more information you can provide, the more detail you can provide it, given reasons. I don't need to know how many 16 penny nails you have, but I do like to know that you got them. But the more information you provide, the more clear, and the whole thing is you're clarifying to cover yourself. So I'm not going to write the contract I don't write the contracts here, but where I worked before, when I write the contracts, I would just state that my blanket statement line is you have everything for this scope of work in accordance with the contract documents. Not in accordance to the specs, not in accordance to the drawings, in accordance to the contract documents. That means everything. RFIs, submittals, addendums, all the contract documents, you're responsible for your scope of work. And you need to clarify, I'm responsible for this, and then it's when you have inclusions and exclusions. You're like, yeah, I'm including all this, but I'm excluding this specifically. And exclusions are usually come from mistakes and lessons learned. So, talking about steps, so we're going to count for key cost drivers and risks. Labor productivity factors. This is what I was talking about, like skill level and experience. Carpenters versus the carpenters. Limited available resources. Are the labor halls full? Do we have skilled labor in our own company? Do we have the right people? Is there site access limitations? Is there confined space? Where are we parking? Do the guys have to be bussed into the site? Do we have to think about that? What's the cost for that? Work hour restrictions. Are there any, you're working around a live campus? Are you working around, are you on a school, doing a school project? Are you limited by, are you in residential neighborhood? Are you limited by work hours? Weather delays and seasonal impacts. I mean, we're in the Pacific Northwest, so it's not the same thing as when I worked in California. In California, if it starts to sprinkle, they shut the job down. I used to joke and say that I had the sugar crew on my project because they melted in the rain. In here, we don't really care about the rain, you just keep working. Seasonal impacts, maybe you got weather, storms, whatever, heat waves, Arizona projects. Interference from other trades. I'm talking about trade stacking. Are other people in your way? You can't do your job and install the electrical because, the carpenters are in your way. I don't know. It's usually it's the fire sprinkler guy has put his stuff right where all the electrical is supposed to go.
Right. Throws all the material.
Hey, watch it now. David's here.
So
you guys are always in our way.
Now let's talk about commodities. We talk about material considerations. What is market volatility? Maybe it's market volatility in steel, concrete, any petroleum-based product. You're gonna have, lead times, supply chain disruptions. We talked about that earlier about electrical equipment, all the different things that have lead times. Now, one thing to think about when you have equipment or other things come to the job site, I had mentioned before that Hoffman has a nothing hits the floor policy. So nothing's coming in pallets and shrink wrap. Everything's coming in on the job site on carts. So you got to think about that when you're estimating your job. Off and on-site storage and protection requirements. If you have equipment that needs to come in.
So how would you know that if it's coming in on carts instead of, how would you know that?
How do I know it's coming in carts? It's a requirement in when you get a contract in this, it spells that out.
Nothing hits the floor. It's a safety thing, and,
Yeah.
and it helps their insurance, and it reduces their cost if they have everything off the floor. It also helps mobility when you're on a large project and you got big heavy things in the way. You get a forklift, get that thing right out of the way and keep it moving. But if it's not on a fork or on a pallet, it could take hours to move stuff.
Well, also, you're not leaving scrap wire on the ground, rebar laying around. You know, a lot of accidents that you have, like small injuries, like hands, you know, things like that, trips and falls, are usually because someone's left something in the way, someone's climbing on something where they shouldn't be, or they're trying to work around something that shouldn't be there. Or you got to worry about pinch points and things like that. So when you planned on to run your electrical, you didn't plan on the HVAC guy to have a piece of equipment sitting in your way. So now you're trying to work around it. Then someone's like leaning over. Also, are you working over a live equipment? Are you having to, you know, give you a prime example, a recent job at Bid Down, Arizona. We took it over from a different contractor, and as basically a favor to the client. It wasn't a job we were chasing down. They came to us, asked us to help them out. And one of the things they were doing is they make solar panels, but they have their equipment, right? And the current contractor, not us, but the current contractor was trying to they had people hanging over the top of the working equipment, trying to screw and bolt stuff together. Well, if a screw or bolt falls down into that piece of equipment that's working, it's no longer going to be working. It's going to shut down the whole day, production, and everything else, and plus possibly damaged equipment. So when we went and bid the job, they said, "Oh, this is the same as we did the last job." And I said, "Yeah, okay, we got a great idea," because I had talked with the superintendent, the project managers. That's where I heard the story. I said, "Well, why don't we reroute this electrical line or equipment so it doesn't go across your new equipment, and let's install it over here out of the way, and then this is a VE item that we were showing you that we can do." And they're like, "Oh, that's a great idea, but we're going to hire the cheap contractor instead." So
I don't mean to try to get you off subject, but when you said that, and you just said things coming on a pilot, that's almost like an industry standard. But you just also said that when you came to work and somebody just hired you to take over a project, and when you came to work, they had materials and everybody was hanging. Yeah. What happens if we work for Hoffman or working for you guys and we think we're going to be able to work in a certain kind of condition, and we get there and it's not that kind of condition? What do we do, and how can we?
You do it right the first time. That's what you do.
No. Do we need to put things in our contract to say?
It's in our contract how you will work on the job site.
Okay, is it in the contract that we're going to have access to the work and not have to work over things that you just said?
I don't know how it's written on that scope, but you shouldn't be working over live equipment to begin with.
There's nothing wrong with putting it in your language.
Yeah.
I think that's what
it
I'm
creates
trying
conversation.
100%, yeah.
Because our people will see it and they'll be like, "What's this shit?" Right? And then they'll call you, and then you'll be like, "No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do," and you will have that conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah, a lot of times with those finite details, sometimes what happens is those site conditions differ from what you bid on or what the plans dictated, and that would be when you start that notification process. Hey, this ain't what we talked about, and sending that notification, not eating it, thinking we're gonna fix this later, but sending that official notification, and sometimes that means work doesn't start until that can be reconciled. Because you definitely don't want to start eating those incidents because it can impact your profitability. Sorry.
And in working with Hoffman, you're going to be in meetings and accessing the site and seeing what's going on out there before you start work.
Hey, Travis.
Yes.
I want to tell you guys something that you probably missed in what he just said earlier. Because we had an idea, we brought the idea, and the owner went with the lowest price. There's going to be opportunities on a job where you are going to be looking at a set of drawings for us. Or you're going to go on a job walk, and you're going to have a great idea. Don't share your idea with everybody in the room. Right? This is a competition. If you have a good idea about, hey, they want me to cut through this floor and reroute all my electrical, What if we just took it and ran it up across the top and ran it through the drywall? Don't say that in the job walk, right? Wait till you see the plans, come back, talk, have that little private conversation, and try to figure out if that's gonna work in your favor when you bid the project. Look for that creativity, but don't blow it and make everybody have that same idea, right? And hurt the project. Ooh.
Unless you want to scare the other person off and you tell them that, oh man, we're going to have to bring a crane in here, helicopter this in.
No, that's a good strategy.
I've been on a job walk before where the contractor was like, how do we get the stuff in here? And the engineer for the airport was laughing and joking. He's like, oh, you got to bring it in with helicopter. All right. And so they had bid the job. The company had bid the job using a big crane. So let's just jump back to this. Equipment, regulatory costs, right? So when the whole point is think of key cost drivers and risk. Identifying risk. Do you have to have SWIPy, noise, things like that? You're just trying to identify anything you identify as risk. Note it in your estimate. I mean, and like Mel said, if you make a note about it and you brought it to someone's attention and you're like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. That's going to be a big thing. So one thing I want to talk about, and these are things, the hidden fees, the overhead costs, right? We talk about indirect costs, bonding, insurance, contingencies, and profit. So some example calculation, like over here on the board, but indirect costs are usually, so we're all talking about the same thing. We talk about GCs, GNRs. GNRs are what? General requirements. GCs are general conditions. All right. Indirect costs is all encompassing of GCs, GNRs, other things. So when you're talking about supervision, office expenses, administrative support, your estimating team, your project management, typically 10 to 15% of your direct costs can be tied to those indirect costs. All right. So that's your overhead. Exactly. So we're all speaking the same terminology. You've heard it all. So some people say, oh, what's your overhead and profit? Okay, so your overhead is your indirect cost, your bonding, and your profit. That's all your overhead costs, right? Overhead and profit. Bonding, insurance, you have payment bond, performance bond, things like that. Those are insurance costs. Typically those should be between, depending upon how good your bond rate is, those fluctuate. I've seen it written in contracts. When I was in California, I'd write contracts. We would pay for subcontractors bond up to 3%. We'd pay for your bond up to 3%. If your bond was greater than 3%, you have to pay that other
You got to pay the delta.
All right. Contingencies. This is our allowances for unforeseen conditions.
Raise your hand if you use contingencies in your bids.
Now, do you know the difference between contingency and allowance? So, an allowance is, I know I need to have this in the job. I don't know what it's going to cost. So I'm carrying a budget for this in my scope of work. Okay, I have an allowance for painting. We're going to paint the house. I threw an allowance for so much square footage, 5,000 feet of square. Yes. Well, no, that's
something different.
That's something different.
That's good to have that,
but
though.
It is. So that would also be part of your contingencies. You could say that's a contingency. That's not an allowance. So an allowance is, it's a cost I'm putting into my budget, but I don't have a quantifiable, I don't know an exact, it's a swag, it's a guess. I'm like, hey, you know what swag is? All right.
Scientific wild ass guess, right? But to her point, I want to make sure we don't go over this.
No, I'm going to go to that right now.
Please.
So, contingency, a lot of times we will identify risk on, I'll call it our top sheet. So the estimate that I'm turning in, the front page, the top sheet, I identify that contingency is I usually carry it below the line because it's something I want to talk about. I want to bring it to the owner's attention or bring it to the project manager's attention and say, hey, I'm carrying a line item in here. I pulled it out. I want to bring everyone's attention to this. This is whatever that you said, future impact cost. Also, we call that, could be escalation. So how do you account for that future escalation? What do you think, as a show of hands, is the right percentage, anybody got an idea, what you would carry for a job that you're not is going to be midpoint of construction in 2 years from now. So you're not. It's a 1 year long project. We're going to start it next year. Midpoint's at say 2 years from now, whatever it is.
10 to 15% of what it costs now.
What'd you say?
10 to 15% of what it's
Now,
costing.
where did you come up with that number?
Experience from
What of
military.
so 10 or 15% of what it costs now per year,
Like,
or just a blanket 10%?
just like if you're saying it costs $20,000, and then you're saying that next year you're assuming there's gonna be inflation, stuff might not be, you might material may no longer be made, so you have to find a substitution for it. So you have to account all that.
But now I said for your whole project.
For the whole project, yeah.
You carry 10 to 15% escalation on your total cost of work.
I would say 5 to 10%.
Or bring it down to.
What did you say?
I would say that there's two separation. One's labor, which generally the labor unions or the prevailing wage is going up anywhere from 3 to 4% per year. So
yeah, so you have labor escalation.
Yeah, so it's your labor escalation of 6 to 8%, and then the material. That one right there, and this conditions, we're holding it for 30 days, and we can call our supplier, say, can you hold this number for a year? And so then they'll say, well, we'll go a 10% escalation, so or 15% escalation.
Right. So normally what I do, this is what Mel said, 5% per annum. So 5% per year is what I'm carrying for escalation on my total cost of work. So now, when I say total cost of work, I already have contingencies built into that cost. My contingencies, the theory of cost of work and contingencies is identified risk that will eventually go up into cost of work. So now I take that contingency I carried and I want to make sure my risk, my escalation is including to calculate for those contingencies. So that's just finite in the weeds math there, but.
Thank you for clarifying that. Very good point. And most of us, when we're working on these jobs, we're not thinking, like Holman Dock, that project was a 7-year project. You hear me? 7 years. So how many times does your labor rate go up in 7 years? What happens to the cost of gas and your commodities, copper, steel, and so
multiple presidential elections.
So yeah, exactly. And so you really want to anticipate those variables that could very well impact the bottom line. Please, and then we'll get going.
Okay. So question: you say you typically do about 5%. So how do you account for things like no one knew that tariffs were going to hit as a thing, and you've already say that project was estimated? Are you excluded?
No, I have also drawn a line in there and say another line item under my contingencies. If I say either A, we're not going, and in my letter, my clarifications to the owner, we do not include any costs for tariffs in our estimate.
No, I'm saying like before it's.
How do we? Sure. How do I account for a 60% increase in the cost? You don't.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So, but I was on a job, and all of a sudden we had COVID, right? And we had to create a separate cost for all the costs associated with, PPE, things like that, the delays in productions. There was anything that's associated with the COVID costs. We had to then track all those costs separately. And that was from every trade partner on the job, every 5,000 people who need to have a mask. So we have mask galores on the job, and to make sure those people aren't just throwing the masks on the ground. And then we got to deal with people like, hey, you got to be 3 feet away from that guy you're working with. All right, you got to be 5 feet away, Get those carpenters out of here. So it's like, and then we started having staggering people working hours. So it was a huge cost impact. So in my estimate, there was no way to account for that. Because if I put in a risk factor of 40%, I still would have been losing money. So luckily, some of the jobs we were able to cover that cost because the client had to eat the bill because it was a cost plus job.
Yeah, and most
Yes.
most of the industry and the market is responding to these acts of God. So we're having to adapt to these variations, and now you're seeing contracts actually including language. Hey, man. I don't care
Force
what's
majeure.
going on in DC, but now we're getting more sophisticated on our exclusions.
More so my question, how do I protect myself as far as like if I bidded a job in 2018 not knowing anything about COVID, you know, and the job started afterwards, is there then a set meeting like, hey, let's bring the team together and figure out how we're going to handle this because I'm
We're probably going to try to argue with force majeure and say it was act of God, but yeah.
I mean, what if the client doesn't want to eat it?
right.
Well, then
Does it happen?
it didn't happen to me, but I'm sure it happened to other people. But I think that's one, a poor client, but two is you're trying to build a project for them, and there's a lot of negotiation has to take place. It's like, look, we have no control over the products that we put in place. We have no control over apocalyptic, things. And if you read our exclusions, we exclude, apocalyptic happenings that we. So let's talk about data mining.
Hold on. Before you jump to that, I wanted to agree on one thing that you said, something that kind of threw me off. We don't guess that 5%. Okay, so we have a commodities index.
Yes.
That we actually go through and research what's going on with all the commodities. So this isn't a guess, right? We kind of look and we know what's going on with steel, what's going on with lumber, what's going on with labor. And we price those against different indexes. And so we have that information.
I probably should have clarified that, but yeah. No, I appreciate that. But yeah,
and it averages around that 5%.
Well, it averages around 4 on average. Like, talking average, it's like 4%. But it's tracking not just here in Seattle, not just Portland, but also like California and Arizona. And we're showing how the, steel, timber, copper, all those prices are adjusting and what's going on in the market. And I'm including that commodity index with my estimate to the owner, so they can see this is the trend, this is the backup for why my estimate is carrying this escalation. This is where I get this, and we have an internal meeting in estimating of, the power ups. They talk about, well, what are we going to carry this year for? What do you want to carry for escalation? What do you want to carry for that? What are we going to carry? And so every month, every week, we have estimating meetings, but we talk about this all the time. So we're still seeing we should carry this in our index and all that. But thank you for that.
Is that index public knowledge?
Yes. Is RGB report?
There's a couple, and some are better. One's an RGB, which is, I think,
Red, green, and
labor and material. One is strictly labor, and one is like all commodities. Because you might want to look at all three, right? You want to say, okay, what's going on with material? And what does that look like over the long period? Okay, I'm gonna put that in this percentage of growth. What's going on with labor? Because labor's didn't go up quite. Well, actually, labor went up way more because the material rates are balanced out, but now you can't find people. So labor is really high right now. So there's 3 different indexes, and I can share those.
Yeah, we'll share them with the whole group, so all of you will have links, and then you can incorporate that into future projects. Thank you so much, Mel. This is some great diamonds. We shaking them. We shaking Mel too.
So when I talk about early on, I had talked about historical data and we all agreed that historical data is useless if you don't know what's in the history. It's just a number. So when you do historical data collection, if you can do your own, whether it's on Excel, whether it's something that you're doing, track what you're spending on the projects and make notes. Why this, if there was some outlier of why this was different, and for future projects, use that to, hey, this is what we did on this project. If it's relatively close, if you're bidding 5 projects in the same month, you could use this probably the same rate for certain things, given that it's the same exact environment. But if you're like, hey, this one is a greenfield project, this one is a TI, it's not going to be the same rate. So you're going to adjust that accordingly. Supplier marketplace intelligence. Hold meetings with your subcontractors and suppliers. See what's going on. Validate, update your price. track those cost trends that we were just talking about. You know, create specialized metrics like linear foot by diameter, depth, electrical cost codes per square foot by facility type. So when you do an estimate and you finish your job and you've built the project, go back, take your estimate, and redo a matrix of that estimate, what your total cost was for this type of project, whether it's a apartment complex or a hotel or a building. Take that number you did after all your RFIs, everything else, your total cost to work a job, go back, redo an estimate based on a square footage cost for this type of work. And you can build that out. So then you have that as a cost matrix you can use for future references or conversations. And it helps you understand that this type of work, I know for these apartment complexes, this is going to be on average $100 a square foot to do this.
Yes. So for projects that you've already performed, obviously you can get historical data,
Yes.
right? But let's say you bid a job and then you go and you get asked for feedback. So, you know, if I bid a job, I'll go ask the general contractor, hey, sometimes they'll tell you price, sometimes it's percentage, but how does Hoffman, so you guys pursue a job, you guys lose the job, you guys find out, okay, we lost it by 5, 6,
If they tell us.
7%, if they tell you. What are you using that information for? How are you?
So we save all those estimates, right? But we can still use that because usually when we lose a job, it's not because of our estimate. It's it's because of other things. It's usually not the cost is not the variable. It could be something in the timing of the job, our schedule, duration of the job, how long we think it took to do the job. The owner will say, oh, we think this is an 18-month job, and our team analyzes it and says, oh no, we think this is a 36-month job because you're 52 weeks out just to get a generator. You can't do the job in 40 weeks, you know, things like that. So usually it's not a cost on the estimate, but sometimes it is, and we'll go, okay, well, they were $100 million lower than us. Either we did something wrong or they did something wrong, you know. But a lot of times you'll have what you call your GC and fee when we're bidding a job as a GCCM. So our fee or our general conditions, and which those are in Hoffman, are done by, you know, the executive VPs who determine that cost. So it's not estimating.
Does that get back to when you made that first statement that this is art and math?
Yes.
Art is popping up all the time, and you'll never be able to quantify art.
Right.
That's what
I do have a follow-up question though, because a lot of times, you know, these public works projects are lowest bidder.
Yeah.
So like, we're having to figure out, okay, I'm gonna bid the job. I'm bidding against PCI, and
Yeah.
one of the bigger contractors. They have a lower overhead
Yeah.
because they're just doing, you know,
Yeah.
multi.
They're making it up by volume.
Yeah. So, like when it comes to something like that, like if you found yourself in our position, and it is lowest bidder, right?
So here's what I can tell you. Two things. One, I know what it costs for my guys not to work. I know what it costs me. I don't know what it's going to cost me if they go do a job and they make a mistake. All right? So it's cheaper, and more companies will die from gluttony than they do starvation. All right? So you can go out there and bid a bunch of jobs, and you're going to, you know, run yourself thin, like butter spread over too much toast. All right? You're just you'll run yourself in the ground. You can look at unit rates of what they bid their job. If you're bidding as a GC, as a general contractor, right, and you're bidding a job against PCI, and you can say, okay, well, and it's a public works job, and they have to list their subs, all right? So a lot of that goes back to subcontractors are the backbone of all the estimates. So you're going to your subs and your trade partners, and you're trying to work the deals, like, hey, give me the good old boy discount. Where can we save money? Let's work together. Oh, I know you're giving a number to PCI. I want to either get better than or equal to the same number. I don't want you giving them the good old boy discount. All right. So then the second part is you're bidding public works jobs, and you say, okay, if you have the same materials and the same product at the same price that PCI is buying, they're buying the same materials. They're both putting in concrete. You're putting in concrete. They're putting in drywall. You're putting in the same wall, same materials, right? So there's no magic on that. So where's your money hidden? It's in your risk. No, it's in your risk. Risk comes to not sure if we can do it for this amount of money. How much risk is labor? Where your risk is your labor. How much time do you put to that job? Because at a certain point, the people doing the work for you who are doing out in the field are the ones either making or breaking your company. And you can't just be out there throwing Slurpees as a superintendent and be like, work faster. That doesn't help, right? So how do you mitigate that risk? How do you get it built faster?
Now with Hoffman on the on the GCCM projects, they're making decisions. The owner is making decisions on contractors based on experience, their team, their available team, their team, their corporation, and their fee, safety,
100% safety,
inclusion. But that's one of typically 5 factors, that fee. And Hoffman doesn't want all the projects, they want the right project, and neither do you, right? At the $35 million you guys have bid this year, did you want all those projects? After you found out how things,
So there's projects to this day that I know that, like, I'm talking billions of dollars worth of that work that we've turned down because we don't have, say, the people to do the work, because we have work going on over here. So it's like, okay, well, we can't do this job and keep a successful way that we are successful. And so that's where I'm saying it's better to be successful and keep your company mean and lean, and don't become gluttonous and take on too much work, and don't let the client dictate the price.
Follow the profit, not the sales.
So I'm given I'm not an expert in this at all, but the one
Neither
thing
am I.
that always, you're more than, but one thing that as a consumer, I always hear, all these public works are $10 billion over budget, $20 billion over budget. Sound transit.
Do you want me to explain that to you?
Yeah,
You want me to explain how that works?
And specifically, coming to this, somebody was bidding on these projects. The tunnel, God help us, the tunnel, right? Like somebody messed up on their estimation, or there's like corruption. Like
100%.
what is going on? And then does it mean to me in my mind is like, hey, bid low, and then say sorry, and then here you go over budget. Like, where does this lie? Where's that?
Well,
I'm sure I'm touching a nerve.
No. The first thing I learned in construction is you need to be able to answer 2 questions. Why does it cost so much, and why you can't get it done faster? All right. No. When you look at a job, say, that's for the state, and it is a job that is already fully 100% designed, and you're bidding as a public works job, and you have no say in the design, and before they bid the job, there was a third-party contractor that gave the state a budget for that job. So that was the budget, they advertised budget. All right? So this is what I have to argue with on a daily basis. So now, private factor. Company gets a budget. A third-party estimator, who's the designer, puts a budget together. They use something like RS means, which we have a whole discussion off camera about RS means. They put a budget together. And I'll give you a prime example. Project I bid, the owner said, here's the project, here's their budget. Before we bid the job, I looked at it and go, this is at least $350 million. At least. It was $750 million when we got the design. The budget was $100 million. All right? And I said, well, where'd you get that budget number from? They said the designer. And I'm like, well, they haven't built anything in this country, apparently, because it's going to cost more than that. So it blew up the whole project. We didn't have the money. They didn't have the money. We scrapped 95% of the job. So when you look at these budgets, you get third-party estimators who put budgets together who are using historical data, RS means, to put these budgets together. And they say, oh yeah, we did a project like this in Virginia. It should only be $6 a square foot for drywall. And everyone's putting drywall and it's going to tell me, no, it's not going to be $6 a square foot for drywall. You can't even, and I had $500,000 for a generator. That was in the budget. I said, okay, well, that doesn't include all the parts for the generator. That doesn't include installing the generator. That doesn't, there's no way, not for $500,000. And this is a budget that I just saw, like 2 days ago. And I said,
So how does the ones that are overrun, that's my question. My question is like, how are they able to
Justify?
Justify and
Well, because it's not the budget's overrun, because it's not a guaranteed max price unless it once you have a GMP, a guaranteed max price, or a MAC, there's no going back to the well. So the overrun is based on the third-party engineer's estimate. So then once we have a identified MAC, you're saying this is what this is going to cost.
So the Sound Transit thing did not overrun budget? Again, all I hear is sound bites on the news, right?
Right, because that's where I go for all my information.
Well,
The news only knows what they know, and they only know what is published,
Right.
and what is published is a third party's engineer's estimate.
got it. So it's actually pre-negotiated. They're like, hey, this is actually the real price.
Yeah.
A perfect example of that.
Unless there's a change of conditions, which is an RFI.
Like the ton.
That's a perfect example of that. We did a job where they had a third-party estimate, and we came in 50% over because the third-party estimate had forgot to put the foundation in.
I remember that one, right?
Yeah.
Put that foundation.
Right.
So, but understanding when you said like, when you go in and you're chasing public work and they want low bid,
Yeah.
just know what work you want to chase. Do you want to chase where they're looking for low bid? I don't. Because you guys know you can't compete. It's not your spot to win. So if you know we're looking at these different contracting methods, that's what you want to chase. Because they're being more flexible for you all. You can actually be a part of the team and not just a subcontract.
So I'm going to bring this. I was listening to the news on my way up as I'm driving up here. And they were talking about Trump dropping like the EI, I can't pronounce it, the EI, the DES, thank you, the DEI requirements, all right? And I was expecting that to be a question I had to answer today. What is Hoffman gonna do for our trade partners if those requirements are gone? And I was laughing because it doesn't affect what we do. It doesn't matter because our company, the way we're built, we're still gonna be doing that. We're still going to be trying to bring in contractors, trying to bring in minority contractors, trying to bring in small businesses, because that is how our company is. And so I didn't know if anybody had heard that on the news, if that was going to affect anybody in here.
Yeah, we've been hearing it, but we've been talking about it in different settings, and we didn't want to talk or divert our attention from the content. But I can tell you that we're lions here, and it doesn't matter if there's goals. We're going to get our meat, and we're going to get the meat off the bone. And so we are very aware of what's going on in DC, but that's why we're in this class, because we want to make sure that we're competitive no matter what the goals are and what the owner requires.
So one last thing. So I want to get through this here. Feedback loop implementation. Let's talk about compare your estimates to what you did in the past. Completed projects, all that, right? Go back, do your own matrix of what it is the way you're looking at projects. So in the future project, you can see where do we need to trim the fat? Where can we shave off? Where can we, our unit price bring it down? But maybe we carry that fat up somewhere else, so we're still getting our cheese. Then some common pitfalls to ignore.
Can I just ask a question on the estimating thing?
Yeah.
Just so that a lot of times Hoffman will send out like the engineer's estimate. Is that Hoffman's engineer's estimate, or is that the port or whoever you're bidding to?
I don't know because I don't know what you're being sent.
So like for this water treatment plant that's going to be happening in Kitsap, there's an engineer's estimate that Hoffman sends out with the invite. So is that Hoffman that's doing the engineer's estimate, or is it who's the engineer? I guess on that.
If it's our estimate that we sent out, then it was my estimate that went out to Kitsap.
Okay.
So it's not even Hoffman's, it's his.
Okay, so the bid packages are
It's accountability. It's accountability.
That's an important part because, you just know who you're messing with. Yeah.
No, it's It's Hoffman's estimate, but no, it's my name on that estimate. So,
I wanted
you know,
to say something
Yes,
about
sir.
the messaging. When you say you're bidding on these jobs and you know the low bid get it, but Mel just said we wouldn't work in an environment like that, and I would work in an environment like that. So when you guys go after these jobs and y'all making decisions when it's bid time, how much you're gonna lower your price to try to beat that other guy?
Well, a lot of times it is, negotiating with the first tier subcontractor, right? Because they'll say, hey, you're higher than where we're at, and I'm like, yeah, well, you're huge. You're PCI. You got millions and millions of dollars. You already have the crew set up. You already have the infrastructure.
okay, so you're not talking about public works jobs. You're talking about you're trying to get in, say, well, like PCI or like say Hoffman, and we're going to like say multiple subs and saying, hey, okay, well, where's your budget at? It's not a. We have our budget that we already put together that we gave to the owner, and we said, hey, this is what we think it's going to cost to build it, right? And
even Hoffman will send out, when they're advertising, when you guys are advertising for a job, it's like the engineer's estimate on the packages,
Yes,
right? So,
yeah.
and that's what I was referring to. So, like, for example, I'll take a look at the bid package. I'll be like, okay, well, I know that anything over 50 grand for Hoffman, I got a bond, and I can't bond right now, so I'm gonna go after, bathroom accessory because it's $20,000. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I'm talking about. So, like, for
but for that case, when they're sending out bid packages, those estimates for the bid packages have came from what the estimating team has put together in the estimate. So for a Kitsap example, because it was me that did it, so I took the entire estimate and broke it down into bid packages. And so John Hamilton and I sat in the office, and he's like, okay, this is how the bid package I wanted to be into, and I took the estimate and broke it out into all those different individual bid packages. And I gave it to him. I go, here's all the individual bid packages. And so then we created another file that has, all the different subcontractors who were going to bid each individual bid package. What's the Hoffman estimate? I don't know what they sent you, and he might have sent you a thing that said, here, this is the estimate for the bid package, and it could be $20,000 lower than what I have in my bid package. But I don't know what they sent to you because I don't see that part.
Yeah, well, just on the advertisement, so I have the engineer's estimate, right?
Right, but I don't know if he's giving you the true engineer's estimate or if he's giving you what I had in the bid package.
No,
or
I'm sure it's ballpark. Because even like the one that we bid, it was, I think.
Just remember that it's even when we do it, we're gonna dial it. Unless we're self-performing, we're still sitting back there guessing, counting widgets and all this stuff. We're expecting you to build this in your head, build it. So walk through it, give us a number.
For sure.
So we can actually understand how many bolts did you use, what did we miss, and if everybody else.
And so, like, when you look at the job, for example, say Kitsap, what were you looking at, for example? This specific
I was looking
question.
at the metal stud framing drywall package.
Okay,
So it's not a big package.
No, I just want to know what it is that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I had one of the estimators do a takeoff for metal stud framing, right? And they put a rate together for it. And then I looked at the rate they used for it and I adjusted it because it's my name on the estimate. So I adjusted, no matter what number they put into it, I go through and I look at every number on the estimate. And if I missed a number on the estimate, they're not calling the person who worked on it, they're calling me. Because that's accountability. My name's on the estimate, I certified, I reviewed this. So if I miss something, it funnels down.
It's just when I've seen the flyers before, it says engineer's estimate, and a lot of times, like you said, it's like, okay, is this just RS means, or is this kind of like, are you really giving me a ballpark figure, or because, if it, like I said, if it is if it's, let's just say a $45,000 bid package, and I know I got a bond at 50, and it ends up being like 100,000, then I'm gonna be like, okay.
Right, and a lot of times those budgets are put together, and when I did the estimate, we were at 60% drawings.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I never saw the 90% or 100% or whatever they were. So when I'm putting those estimates together based on 60% drawing, now the superintendent or the project manager could at that point in time and say, hey, we're making these changes on the job, we're taking this scope of work out, we're adding this scope of work in. Travis, can you give me a budget for this? Can you give me a budget for that? And that's happened on that particular job where we're taking buildings out, we changed the tank size. It was 2 digester tanks, now it's a 1.4 million gallon tank. So all those changes are taking place, get rid of a building, add in a building things. So that was all taking place after the bid. So I have a file called post-bid estimate, which is, so, as it's progressed changes to the 90%, but I never put together a 90% estimate.
So are you going through, even through construction as the drawing, like, At what point are you handing it over to the?
At the 60% estimate, I handed it over. Down the road. But as he progressed, he asked for changes, and they asked for, hey, can you give me a budget for this?
So we have 5 more slides. Did you have a question? Okay.
All right. So, common pitfalls to avoid. All right. These are things I was thinking of. These are nice conversation pieces here because ignoring site-specific challenges. This is what we were just talking about, some of the challenges. So you're on Kitsap and you're, hey, where's this project located? You've got to get there somewhere. Are you going across by a ferry? Are you going all the way around because it's over on by Bainbridge? So that's a site-specific challenge. It's an active wastewater treatment plant. So you're limited by what you can do. You don't have a big yard to work out of. So it's a specific challenge. It's a live treatment plant. So those are some things to think about. Incomplete scope definition. You're doing drywall. Cool. Where? Which building? So is the scope defined? Do you understand what's in the scope? Does the person asking you for the price understand what's in the scope? So that's all part of that open communication, making sure that we're talking and being engaged with each other and having that communication and making sure that no matter what's going on, you're covering yourself and you're bringing up anything to us. You said, hey, you should be thinking about this. Did you think about this when you put your budget together? Did you think about that? Understanding compliance costs. What does that mean to you? If I said understanding compliance costs.
Prevailing wage, certified payroll.
Yeah. Certified payroll. Do you have to have prevailing wage? Is it union requirements? Is BOB requirements?
Paperwork, reporting.
So, unrealistic expectations and missed deadlines. If I call you up and I say, hey, I need a budget from you tomorrow, and you'll be like, what? Yeah, no. But if I say, hey, I need this budget from you in 3 weeks, can you do that? And you say, yeah. And then I call you up, I'm like, hey, how's that budget going? I got some questions. Oh, I haven't started it yet. 3 weeks rolls around, I'm like, hey, where's your number? I need to put my bid, I need this. You're like, oh, can I have till Monday? I'm like, okay, well, now it's like, all right, well, that's kind of irritating. Then I go to the owner, I still have to turn my budget in the owner because I can't miss my deadline. And so the owner goes, well, what'd you carry this? Well, why did we carried a plug for it. Why did you get subcontractor pricing? Well, I asked the sub to price it out, but I'm not going to go in with that excuse to the owner.
Call Jimmy.
I gave him your phone number on the estimate. So, incomplete assumption communications. So this is where we talk about everyone knows what assumptions are, right? The beginning of all problems. So if I assumed, I made the conversation earlier about the traffic control plan. If we make an assumption and I assume one thing and you assume something else and we don't understand what we're talking the same thing, then that's an issue. So, for example, if you're talking like bathrooms and I say, hey, I'm assuming that you have all the toilets and fixtures and everything else, the bathroom's complete. You're like, 100%, got it. And then, but you excluded all the bow brick, hand towels and, toilet things and all this and the trash cans. I'm like, well, I thought that was like, oh, no, I had the sinks and the toilets. I didn't include any of those other Division 10 items. Well, what about the toilet partitions? Oh, no, we don't do that. So that's my assumptions. I think you have it all, whereas you're like, no, we don't do that. So that's that, making sure that we're talking the same page, same language. It's also, when I'm writing your contract and I say you have everything for Division 10 in accordance with the contract documents, and you're like, yeah, we got it all. And someone who did your estimate's like, we didn't include that. So it's that, make sure that's covered. Budget overruns, financial strain. Going back to what we were talking about, what do we do when we overrun the budget? Financial strain, all right? Public works job, if you bid the job for $50 million, unless there's a reason that you went over budget, that's on you, all right? Cost plus job, that's a little different. We have to justify the cost of everything we're doing for the job, so there's not really an overrun, but there is, understanding the scope and making sure we have to justify every single dollar we spend. Right? GCCM, we're developing a budget We're going to the owner with our budget. They're going to the board to get funding for the job. We don't want to go back to the board and be like, oh, we forgot to include the concrete foundations. So that's, we don't have that. And then scope creep and reduce quality. So what does scope creep mean to you?
Creep is when you price for a certain type of scope and you don't necessarily include all of that scope, but then that buffer is not anticipated, but is also included within the overall contract. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Another way you can look at scope creep is when you have a defined scope and you're adding favors, like they ask for aluminum, you're like, well, I think gold plated is a little bit better, looks a little, and you're not taking into consideration what the customer is asking for. You're just trying to do I'm gonna do better than what I'm asked for.
The biggest one that I've seen is like, we have a design, it's an incomplete design, and then we have a budget based on the incomplete design. And then we get a more completed design. Well, the scope's changed. Sorry.
It's 5 o'clock, so I'm gonna let them get away with that one.
All right. Let's talk about some key takeaways here for a second. All right. Precision.
You're sending some invoices off of the next reminder.
Communication, it's winning estimates, right? Everyone's getting tired and getting some glossy-eyed looks here. Yeah.
We're at the finish line.
Accurate data-driven estimates build lasting trust with general contractors and project owners. Do a good job. People remember you. We like that guy. They gave us a good estimate. They built the job right. Good communicators. We like that guy. Clear definition through plan review significantly reduces costly surprises during execution. So do your plan review. Make sure you got the right set of plans. Make sure you're using the latest and greatest set of plans. Communicate with the contractor, communicate with the owner, make sure everything is the way you want. Continuous learning and systematic data refinement. Keep your bids competitive while protecting profitability. Don't chase the low dollar. Don't let the client dictate the price, but don't gouge the client either. Protect yourself. Your estimating expertise is a critical asset that differentiates your company in delivering successful infrastructure projects. So, we're coming to you for your expertise. We're asking you for your help. We're relying on you to be experts in your field. Right? I am not a plumbing contractor. I did stay at a Holiday Inn once, but I am not a plumbing contractor. I'm expecting you to know your scope of work. I'm relying upon you. So now, here are some questions you should be asking. I told you I'd get to this. Schedule and timing. When you're looking at a job, anticipate start and completion dates. When do you think this job's going to, when do they say this job is going to start? What is their anticipation for you to be there? Schedule constraints, permits, access, long lead times. You should be asking questions. What are the hours of operation? What is the site access like? Back to the drawings. Any recent addenda, bulletin, revisions? Are drawing specs complete? Alternates are, site conditions. Is there access laydown? Is there a laydown yard? Or do you have a job trailer on site? Do you have things on site? The bid and contract requirements. What type of contract is this? Is it a lump sum bid? Is it a GMP? Is it a cost plus? Your bonding insurance. What is the work breakdown structure? So this is the big one I get with subcontractors. We're talking about information, detailed information. When you say, when I do an estimate, and you have this, you guys are familiar with the CSI code, like, or the division specs, whatever it is, 1 through 45. So, or however many numbers it is now. And you're doing your work breakdown structure, and I'm saying, okay, this is the work taking place in this area. What scope of work you're doing, what's your labor, material, and equipment, what's your production rate in that. So all of that work breakdown structure, this is how I'm looking for your estimates. If I don't communicate that to you, you should be asking me, because I made an assumption that you knew what I was asking for. So I shouldn't assume that you know that I know that you know what I'm asking for. So that's the open communication. We make sure. Coordinations. Will the GC provide temp power, water? That's fine. I'll keep kicking it. Is there site parking? Is there busing requirements? We have projects that are so big and have so many people that they have to park half a mile or a mile away and be bussed into the job site and then be bussed off the job site. So, there's money involved in that. Last I checked, nobody here was working for free. I mean, I haven't won the lottery yet, so. And risk assumptions. What are the risks that we're assuming? What specific vendor suppliers, escalation clause of materials, allowance contingencies. What questions do you think we should be asking? What questions do you have?
Who's the customer? Who's the GC? That's the people.
You should know that if you're asking.
Well, if you're bidding the job. Right? Well, a lot of GCs will bid the same job for.
That's true. Who are you bidding to?
Exactly.
Yes.
How early are we going to be getting into the conversations?
After this slide. The future is built on precise estimates. Your expertise estimation is not just about numbers. It's about building trust and sharing success and laying groundwork for the infrastructure for tomorrow. Now, here's some current projects that we're working on. Here's some pursuits we're doing. Here's some stuff we're budgeting for. Now, since I made this slide, it's changed. Now this project, multi-use, is actually up in one of my current projects. I just had a kickoff meeting for it yesterday. So, Sound Transit, rail, Duwamish, we're in pursuit of that. Mouth of Duwamish. So all these are things that projects we're going to be chasing down, projects that we're going to be looking for your help with, or projects that we have, like KitSat. Project thing, so.
Or Sound Transit BRT.
Now, questions?
Raise your hand if you've been contacted by Hoffman recently regarding any opportunities. Okay, good. Okay, go ahead.
So now, questions and follow-up, right? One thing I'd like to point out.
Jimmy, Junior.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you said you're bidding the engineering estimate, right? So the engineer's estimate is what you're putting out, right?
It's what I made already.
Okay, so when you're putting the engineer's estimate together, what does that look like? Is that still a detailed estimate? Or
Yes.
are you taking the scale? So you're like, for example, KitSat, for example. You're familiar with that, and I've looked at it. So there you have overhead doors.
No, it's a general question. He just knows I work on KitSat.
So overhead doors, right? For example, are you going and looking through? I don't even know if there are specs, but you're going and looking at doors. Are you getting pricing from the manufacturer to install those doors, or how in depth are you getting into when you're doing your?
When I'm doing my estimate, there's certain things like doors, for example. No, I'm not going out calling a door supplier to get pricing for doors. But I've done a bunch of projects and I know a range of what doors should cost. Okay. I'm not calling Assa Abloy up and being like, hey, how much for this hardware set? Because I don't have specs on the doors. Yeah. I have an idea that there's going to be some note on drawing, overhead coiling door. Note on drawing, hollow metal door. Yeah. I have no specs, no hardware. When I'm putting the budget together, there usually aren't specs. Yeah. So I'm putting a budget together, I'm saying, okay, I think the door should cost within this range. Okay. All right, so now, as it progresses to 90% and gone out to bid, now there's specs. Yeah, exactly. And so now they're gonna, so when they go back and they say, well, why is this over budget? It's gonna be like, well, now we have specs. Anything else on that? Where are my quotes? He's not on there. Oh, so this was the Duwamish thing. And, all right, so any other questions and things you want to go through?
When you're doing submittals for the estimate, I know you say you will kick them back for like.
I don't do submittals.
Oh well, with me submitting my estimate is what I meant to say.
Okay, yeah.
If I'm submitting my estimate, I know you say you'll kick them back for lack of information. So if you just group it, like I'm doing drywall, $20,000. Do you ever kick them back as like, hey, that's too much. I'm not reading that. Please summarize it.
I've done that too.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to find a medium on how to submit. Because I'm an over-explainer, so I want to find a medium.
I haven't seen your estimate because I haven't seen anybody over-explain anything to me that I haven't used.
Follow.
Okay, well, can we give a round of applause for Travis?